Welcome, everybody. Dave Walker here, co-founder and CEO of the Beta SMB Institute, and I am very pleased to bring to us a representative from a very familiar brand name, Zoho. So welcome, Raju.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for doing this. Why don't you give us, again, I think it's a very familiar brand, but why don't you give us a brief history of Zoho and you know how it really has come to be this juggernaut in the SMB space.
Yeah, Zoho is a unique company. I know every company is unique. We are a private company. We have been around for 24 years. Not a new startup per se.
Mm-hmm.
And we have gone through various phases, but the Zoho phase is well known. Interestingly, we started the business, the Zoho started as a department trying to address the needs of small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the name Zoho comes from Soho, which stands for small office, home office. That was our target market.
Really, I didn't know that. That's great.
And
I remember Zoho from way back in the mid '80s. That was an acronym way back in the mid '80s. So wow.
Zoho.com was not available, so we just turned this around and said we call it Zoho.com.
Great story.
And we kept on rolling out applications, primarily focusing on business applications. And we said the best way to address it is just do applications that meet our own needs. And if we are able to meet our own needs, I'm sure there are a ton of businesses like us, like small businesses like us,
Mm-hmm.
who can benefit from this. That was the fundamental thing. Back then, when we started, we were sub 1,000 people, 500 plus team. But now we have grown to about 9,000 employees, and we are able to serve a lot more businesses. So we are a global company. We do business in over around 190 countries. But a good chunk of our audience is obviously small businesses. Every year we serve over 100,000 new SMBs. We have of serving these companies, and that keeps increasing. That mostly due to word of mouth. They like the products, they recommend it to a friend. You won't see us doing a lot of advertising to whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
We have grown through word of mouth, and we owe it to our customers for basically helping us and helping us grow. And I'm hoping that we continue to serve them.
Well, that's a great story. How about you? Give us a little history of Raju.
I've been with the company for over a couple of decades, and this is a common trend within Zoho, by the way, where a lot of people stick with the company.
Mm-hmm.
And what you notice on our homepage is true, where we say your life's work is powered by our life's work. Mm-hmm. We don't look at it as work; it is a life's work. So, majority of us, especially ones that have been around for a couple of decades, like we have spent at least half of our life in the company. So. Mm-hmm. I'm a Zoholic. I guess you can call me.
A Zoholic. That's excellent. You've got a lot of good ones, Raju. These are good. These are memorable.
And I wore multiple hats, and we generally we don't carry titles, because typically a title restricts what you do. But every individual has multiple talents. Mm-hmm. So why don't we let them thrive and showcase their talent? So a title typically restricts it. So we don't give much prominence to titles internally. So if you need a title, call myself, I guess, chief evangelist. But end of the day, I prefer to call, or my unofficial title is whatever it takes. And
that's great.
That resonates with a lot of SMB audience and businesses out there, because as a small business, it's not about the title. It's about what can you do for the business to succeed and to serve the customer.
Yeah, such a great point, because I've tried I've certainly had an opinion with many of our business to small business brand members that hey, look, a small business looking in at you doesn't think about a marketing department. They don't think about a sales department. They don't think about a product development team. What they think is whatever it is that the product is that's going to solve their problem that you're selling. That's it. They don't really think about organizational structure. And if you're not really kind of prepared to interface in kind of that singular brand sort of way like you guys do, then you really kind of frustrate the small business and you end up frustrating yourself.
Absolutely, and that's where while there is some kind of a rough organization structure, the organization structure is going to be chaotic, particularly within Zoho. Just like the world we are surrounded by, everything is interconnected. You cannot put a top-down structure to it, or bottom-up structure to it. Everything is interconnected. So which means that a siloed approach won't help the customer.
That's terrific. So I usually start these interviews with a pretty consistent question. I like to ask, basically, where were you when you realized in the early part of this year, boy, we're entering a crisis for small business? Do you remember that moment?
It has been actually a gradual thing. And it started, I would say, during the last week of Jan, interestingly, and we knew something was brewing, particularly when we had our office in China and our colleagues there had to pretty much shut it down and go home. So we had a kind of a sense of what was going on. So we were, I think, by early March, early Feb, we started paying close attention. By mid Feb, we know that this is going to be a bigger thing than we initially imagined. I think around third week of Feb or so, between around third week of Feb, we basically said maybe we should plan to go completely remote. Third to last week of Feb, and then we were doing some tests internally on whether we can have all 9,000 employees go remote at the same time, and where is our infrastructure and all of that. I think first week around that time, first week of March, we said, okay, we're going all remote. And this was well before governments mandated and all of that. We noticed that this was coming, but it was a gradual thing. What we thought was a small blip end of Jan ended up being a bigger, much bigger thing. And we are actually very glad that we are able to take these early steps and closely monitor what was going on. But and we did not expect it to be this big. While we prepared ourselves to the worst case scenario, we did not expect it to be, this
beyond the worst case scenario, right? Absolutely. Like many people did. I mean, it was hard to envision what was over the crest of the wave, of what, and it really, is there any top to the wave? My gosh, I mean, it's been absolutely crazy. So what were some of the first things that you started to hear from your small business customers as they reached out to you? What were they asking?
Well, frankly, it was a shock for them, and that was the first thing. And for us, they came in and said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't have any customers anymore, and I'm looking at every line item of my expense, and I noticed that I'm paying you some amount. It's not a big amount, but I'm trying to cut every single thing."
Right.
And that was the first thing we started hearing about, particularly from some departments, some groups, some verticals like restaurants.
Right.
And that's when we said, I believe on Monday, we made a decision that we want to help these customers out. And by Thursday, we launched a new program called ESAP. It's an emergency small business assistance program, where we said, any business that needs assistance, please fill out a small form and we'll waive your subscription. And we had thousands of businesses apply. And we wanted to make it as seamless as possible, as short as possible. If they call us the second time to know the status, that would be considered a failure because they have more important things to worry about. So we want to help them out, no questions asked, pretty much. So, something beautiful came out of it where we thought will be a lot of businesses applying, and we also expected some abuse. But what came out of it is some businesses reached out and said, I know I can benefit from it. I know I can apply, but I know that there are other businesses that need it more than I do. So while I might qualify, I'm not going to apply and make the way for other businesses so that they can benefit from what you offer.
Wow, really?
That
I
was,
mean, that's like I go, wow.
yeah, that's an amazing sign. And we have seen ton of such requests from several businesses, and everyone was basically watching out for others and all of that. So we have, I think, 10 to 20, or close to 20,000 businesses applied for that thing. And we said, that's amazing. And we are able to see the trend. And we have seen a big spike, and over a period of time, it trickled down. Now we don't see as many applications, and that's a good sign.
Right.
But we were actually very glad to open that up right away, and help the customers out. I think that was the thing that we thought we will initially and immediately do.
So I'm sure he doesn't go by the title of CFO, but whoever in your organization is kind of in charge of the balance sheet, what was his or her reaction to, my God, this is going to, kill our top line? And
Well,
how did you kind of manage that internal conversation around the challenges of?
frankly, we are not a numbers company. We have never been. So we were going through phases. The first phase, the first week or two is survive. Can we survive this? If the number goes down, if our revenue goes down by 50%, can we survive the next year? That was the thing. Once we realize that we are going to survive, and importantly, survive without letting people go, and if maybe worst case scenario, if we may have to take a pay cut, so be it. But can we survive this? Once we realize that we are going to survive this, then we got into a mode of serve, which is serving the community. And that's when we said, sure, we don't have to, now we know that it's not about profitability. Sure, there are going to be a few years that are not going to be, we're not going to be growing every year. So, but we said we're going to dedicate some amount and we're going to serve the community, because at the end of the day, if your customers are out of business, you're out of business.
Right.
So it's important that whatever we do can help our customers. At the end of the day, we are in it together. So we got into that serving mode. For example, every business is going remote. We said we'll launch a suite of 11 products, 9 or 11 products, and offer it for free. And of course, the revenue for all those 9 products is going to hit 0.
Right.
Said, okay, that's fine. We'll go do it. And we said offer it for free for 3 months. I guess we were more optimistic than we were assuming that the pandemic will end in 3 months.
Right.
But what was the free for 3 months became free for 6 months, and that became 9 months. Now it's available till November. So all those 9 products are available for free 9 months later. And because businesses are going remote and they need tools, and we said we'll offer them free tools. So we got into that mode. Certainly, we know that it impacts the bottom line, but we cut a few things as well. We cut marketing, for example. We said feed people, not Google.
Right.
So that is better. So instead of feeding an automation engine or algorithm, you're putting food on the table, or at least helping people out there who really need it, small businesses out there who really need it. And that in some cases helped as well. So a lot of those, it was, end of the day, it's not always about the money, but it's about the people in the community. I think end of the day, it comes down to that. So nobody actually had any issues with the numbers. We said, okay, this is what we are ready to take a hit on, and we didn't have any issues. And because we have a strong balance sheet, that very much helps.
Again, a terrific story. I mean, I'm struck by the fact that how many of what I would describe as the real success stories across brands in our space, in how they approached helping their small business customers. I mean, it was always a help first kind of approach, and asking them, what do you need? And first and foremost, probably stating the obvious, I need to cut my expenses. But then, I'm curious as to, what kind of demands did small businesses have for training and instruction, and how do I use this, and how do I use this better? And I have to do a crash course in trying to, either pivot my business or respond. What was that like? How did you guys respond to that?
Absolutely. I think one thing is offering tools to small business, saying, hey, here are the tools that will help you go remote. But how do we go remote? What are
Right.
a lot of these are new for a lot of businesses, and including our own employees in some countries, it's completely new.
Mm-hmm.
So we hosted, I would say, at least 100 webinars, if not more, on various topics to educate people, educate our customers, educate small business on how to go remote. And then we took we launched another video series with influencers. We had about 20-30 influencers. We discussed with them. And these influencers were very gracious and said participated for free. On majority of these influencers were working remote, and they've been doing it for about a decade or so. So there's no better way than getting that knowledge right from the experts. So we launched a series that said working remotely with that influencer name, and we did 20-30 videos, and we published them, and we kept on rolling those, and at least providing different perspectives from various people around the world in different languages, and educating people. And on top of it, of course, we have been providing our own feedback on our own experiences, because a good number of us have experience working remotely. So those are all the content and education pieces. And then we also trained our partners to train their customers on how to take it up. So those are all various education things. Offering tools is only one part, but then how to use these, then, because it's not just about going remote. Some of it is all psychological change. What not to do when we're working remotely is equally important as what to do.
I think that most B2SMB brands with their products and services would agree that the adoption of the challenge that they feel with their small business customers was actually amplified over the last 6 months, because there were so many distractions and so many things that, were offered as help, but it's like, look, I don't have time to figure out how for it to help me. And I think kudos to you guys for really just going back at it and back at it and back at it. I certainly was watching from the outside, seeing, boy, these guys are really relentless in trying to make sure that their customers understand how to work these tools. Now, it is, as over these months now that you've really kind of had this assistance to small business, are there any kind of trends that you would see emerging as far as, boy, everybody seems to need this, or the majority seem to need that? Are there any things that are kind of starting to appear?
Some trends that we have already knew that it would be a trend. Mm-hmm. COVID essentially accelerated it tenfold. Mm-hmm. So there are some new lessons, some feedback, and all of that. Particularly if you take something like this video conferencing and various other tools, and how that contextually fits in, and how the usage is. And there are some usages that I did not expect I thought I would ever do on these video conferences. Mm-hmm. I don't know about you. I had to join an auction on a video conferencing. And that was new to me. And there was one case where I joined into a video conference room of a judge who was doing judgments and online on a video conferencing. I thought I would never see that. There are, my daughter goes through these colleges, these attending schools and taking these classes. Usually I was the one who basically says, hey, please don't disturb me while I'm on a call. Now, when I try to enter her room, she's the one saying, hey, don't disturb me while.
Good turnabout.
Some beautiful things, and how things would accelerate. And we moved from California to Austin, and she had a favorite teacher in California for an art class, and she was disappointed that she couldn't find it. Now she's doing the art class with her teacher in California. I thought I would never see that. So those are all some interesting use cases that are coming up, be it remote real estate showing or remote doctors diagnosing the patients. The number of scenarios that we thought that were possible simply exploded several times, and that means the length of the roadmap that we had significantly increased, and the things that we have to do significantly increased. But I'm bullish on how the adoption of anything, adoption of technology. I would say the biggest contributor, ironically, of COVID is adoption and the digital transformation. If there is one thing that contributed or accelerated the digital transformation, we can say that's the pandemic. And particularly in some countries where they have been significantly behind, they leapfrogged and they are now able to do it. And I don't know if they'll go back to the previous state. At least that new normal is not going to be the old normal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So on that subject of digital transformation, and I think there's a number of people I've spoken to who describe it exactly the same way. We took 10 years worth of kind of evolution and we compressed it into a few months of revolution, particularly as it relates to digital transformation. Are taking aside many of the applications and tools, just simply focusing on what small businesses now have to create in the form of a digital customer experience for their consumers, for their customers. Are they ready for that? I mean, do you think that do they understand kind of the pressure to create something that mimics an Amazon experience that so many of us have become used to with online shopping?
They have the pressure to learn and quickly adopt, but they also see the complexity today. Right? And that is where we see a pushback. One thing we noticed is the trend of unified solutions, and we have seen something like Zoho One adoption significantly go up during this. The reason is it comes with all the tools you need. Simplicity on 45 tools with the single price tag and all of that. The simplicity matters, and they simply work with each other. So they don't have to just try to pick all these tools and try to mesh them and create their own solution. They have better things to do. They have a business to run. I think that is one thing that people, and particularly small businesses, are appreciating and are looking for. And I think the trend towards these suites is accelerating. And you'll notice, we have a solution, Microsoft has a solution, and some of the other vendors are also putting together suites, not products. I think we are getting to that model now.
It's interesting because I think there was a period where the kind of the multifaceted suite approach was kind of getting talked down for a little while. When small businesses really want to break it apart and they want to really kind of get the best possible solution. And I really do think that's kind of swung back around 180 degrees, where small businesses are now saying, I don't have the time and I don't have the resources to learn and all these pieces and parts. I need more of a single solution.
Absolutely. And the pendulum keeps swinging between the two. If you go back all the way, Microsoft Office was that suite, but prior to Office, we had Word and Excel and PowerPoint were all separate products, separate companies out there. And now the pendulum swing back to the suites. And then I see it as a heartbeat cycle. There is an explosion of innovation, an expansion of a heart, and you see hundreds of companies doing point products. And then there is a compression, there is a consolidation. And then there is going to be another phase that there is going to be an explosion of innovation and then consolidation. Our industry moves in those heartbeat cycles. Now I believe we reached the peak of that explosion. Now we're going to get into consolidation, primarily because the number of pieces that companies need is basically increasing. So if it is 2 or 3 applications of best of breed, it makes sense. But when you're talking about 20, 30 applications, that's where the complexity comes in. And now that is where customers are now looking for integrated solutions. That is the expansion and contract cycle of our industry.
I think obviously small businesses, and you have a number of products that represent financial management, and a lot of small businesses in this crisis were kind of caught off guard by the financial pressure that was going to suddenly come down on them in the form of 100% loss revenue. Do you think that are there any adjustments, or are there any kind of capabilities when you look at your financial product suite, any that you really think are important for small businesses as they move through the recovery?
Particularly the accounting side of it is, is the core of the finance thing. At this point, collecting money, particularly accounts receivables, and getting paid on time, and making sure that they get paid on time is extremely important. So all the accounts receivable side of it becomes an important thing. Reducing the spend and noticing the trend and guiding them on that is extremely important. We've seen good adoption on tools like our Zoho Books, Zoho Invoice and such, and we have seen a significant decline in tools like Zoho Expense, typically used by business travelers, and business travel doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
So we have seen a significant drop there, but increase in some of the others. So it's a balance. There's not a lot of hiring going on, unfortunately. So the payroll side of it is not, all of that is not going, but accounts receivable part of it certainly is an important part, and the finance part. We are certainly noticing good adoption on those products.
So, as we kind of wrap this up, I guess I would really want to get your perspective on, and your advice, frankly, to your peers in the small business space, of the steps they should be at least thinking through in their individual brand's response to small business recovery. What kind of key pieces of advice would you give them?
Well, maybe I can, instead of advice, I can share what we do and how we operate, if that helps. A different company, unique company, as I said earlier, in the sense that we have zero debt, and we try to keep it that way. If we have to purchase something, we basically ask the question, can we pay cash? And we advise every employee to get to zero debt. And that is a basic advice. What happens in that mode is, one, you get to sleep well at night. And two, it gives you the confidence. In other words, your roadmap is going to be extended significantly because you don't have a lot of bills to pay on a monthly basis. You operate. And a lot of businesses, small business in particular, what they provide is either a product or service, is mostly a commodity in a lot of cases. We call this costly inputs, commodity outputs. If you're a restaurant, food is a commodity. If you're a delivery service, delivery is a commodity. A lot of these are commodity service, which means that might work if you don't have costly input. A costly input could be a really high real estate rent. Or, if you're a delivery business, expensive cars to whatnot. Particularly if you own those cars, own those assets, own those buildings outright, then your monthly bill is going to be minimal. So that's how we operate, where because we have zero debt, now we can confidently say that we can survive. And now it's about how can we serve the community, because the basics are taken care of. We have gotten to a mode, unfortunately, globally, where we are, debt-centric. We have become too debt-centric. And unfortunately, we are educating the next generation to take on debt, right education, which we detest. And that's why we don't mandate college degrees for any of our employees we hire. Because we have about 1,000 employees who don't have a college degree, and we are proud of that. So the debt plays an important role. So particularly on the business side, there is the product side of it, there is a expense and delivery side of it, but another, it comes down to fundamental economics. If you keep your input costs low, then it is easy to get to profitability. You can quickly survive and eventually thrive. But that fundamental economics play a critical role. And I would say that played a significant role in our our own role here, because we are able to, get our finances in order. Well, we've always been very prudent. In some cases, when you're during the early phases of the business, it'll take some time. Maybe the growth may slow down, but what you will have is a very strong fundamental foundation, and then that will allow you to grow. And that is a more, I would say, better model, and that is a model that we very much prefer, and we try to educate it to our employees and possibly others as well. So yeah, so instead of providing advice, I just wanted to share the approach
Yeah,
we.
listen, I think it's fascinating because I do think that not just the small businesses themselves adhering to that advice, but B to SMB brands kind of respecting, I guess, the small business's desire, particularly coming into recovery, to look, I can't financially operate the way I've used to operate. I can't sign a $50,000 hardware lease, that's just going
Absolutely.
to burden me with, with these costs. I've got to figure out a way where, any investment I make really has a revenue face to it, is really
And
doing, and I think that's a lesson for a lot of large enterprises too, is, stop with all the additions of infrastructure that really, frankly, don't really actually face revenue in any way, shape, or form.
yeah, and one of our goals is we don't want to be, or we should not be, a costly input to our SMB customers.
Right,
If we become a costly input, they will cut us.
right.
So, which means we have to make sure that we watch our inputs
Hmm.
so that our output is not expensive.
Right,
So
right.
now you got to ask the question, does it make sense to build a big campus in downtown big city,
Hmm.
or do we rather go remote and save money so that this price that we pay for this, sexy campus is not rolled into a customer subscription? And
Hmm.
nowadays that's what happens. So that is part of the business model. If you're in it for the long run, then watching those costly inputs becomes extremely important, and making sure that you don't become a costly input. That if you don't, then you get that option. And that
Hmm.
is one of the important reasons why Zoho gets that option, because it becomes a no-brainer expense. There's no
Right,
brainer thing. $30 a month is not expensive for a lot of businesses.
right. And I would imagine, and I'd love to have you back to just simply talk about this, to drill down on what the impact of a low cost input is on your product development. There are any number of large brands who invest enormous amounts of money in the products and services that they ultimately take to market to SMBs, with frankly kind of an engineering belief that just one more feature would make this so cool and so differentiated. And I've always respected the fact that you guys have just kept it simple and said, we want to deliver the functionality first, and not get too enthralled with the embellishments that we could offer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I believe it is possible to keep getting the costs down significantly. Take a look at Facebook. Facebook probably serves, say, 2-3 billion people. And if
Hmm.
you look at their numbers, their expense probably comes down to about $3 an active user a month.
Hmm.
If they are able to serve about a 3 billion people at $3 a user a month, why can't a business application vendor serve that? Because end of the day, it's a similar application, a similar scale, or at least maybe a smaller scale. Why can't we serve that at that price point? That's a good way to look at it.
It's a breathtaking number, right? I mean, it's a breathtaking number of what.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
So
fascinating.
the question should be about how can you reduce the price for the customer and not increase it. If
Hmm.
you're increasing it, then there is always someone that is going to come with a better economics and undercut. And that is the case with every business out there, every small business out there, be it a restaurant, be it something else. It's that model, that number makes sense, and it's a constant item. Economics is very tightly remote to the tightly coupled with the product itself.
So what I really love about this conversation, Raju, is that, you know, as much as it's intended to be a playbook on what has Zoho done to serve small business through this crisis, it was really what you were doing all along. And I think that that's really instructive to a lot of us who are thinking we need to, in some ways, reinvent, versus just going back to the things maybe we should have been doing all along, but fundamentally starting with the question, how can I help
I mean,
small business customers?
if I may, I want to add a point, Dave. You know, this scenario that a lot of businesses are facing, as a company, we faced in 2001, 2002, I remember. We were serving purely telecom businesses. We had 305 customers around that time. In about a year and a half time frame, we lost 301 or 302 of them.
Mm.
So when you have 99% of your customers, you know, disappear, what do you do? So it comes down to balance in the bank, how quickly turn around. That taught us a lesson that we couldn't forget. Since then, it is always at the back of the mind, because that pushed us to the verge of bankruptcy or verge of, you know, going out of business. Mm-hmm. And that's a tough lesson. And if some other business can learn from our experience, mm-hmm. that's great. That's the reason I'm stressing on the cash and the costly input point.
No, it makes all the sense in the world. And experience, as you know, is a wonderful teacher. A very unforgiving teacher. This has been absolutely terrific. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, selfishly on my own behalf, but on behalf of all of our members. And I really hope to have you back soon, because I think that there's so many different points that you made up that are worth drilling down on, and so much that we can learn as a community, of how to serve small businesses better in the way in which Zoho does. So thanks very much for doing this. I appreciate it.